So we're going to talk about two patterns of evolution. And the first one we're going to look at is divergent evolution, where we're going to have two species that share a common ancestor that are going to experience, that common ancestor is going to experience different evolutionary pressures in these different, right, the different populations. And those traits of that original population are going to diverge. So let's look at our friend Gamble's oak, Quercus gambelii, if you want to be a nerd about it, which I do, and scrub oak, Quercus turbinella. Now, these two different species share some traits. They both have single leaves, right? They're not growing in leaflets. They have this major vein. They kind of have these lobed edges. So there's some similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. Our Gamble's oak drop their leaves in the fall, whereas the scrub oaks keep their leaves all year round. The similarities that these two different plant species have is because they share that common ancestor. And so we're going to call those similar traits between these two species homologous traits. These are shared traits that the reason that they share those traits is because they share ancestry. Okay. We see this same pattern of one bone, two bones, lots of blobs, digits in all terrestrial quadrupeds. Okay. So anything that lives on land that has four limbs. And that is because all things that live on land that have four limbs are descended from the same common ancestor if we go way back in evolutionary time. Okay. And so the arrangement and the details of how we arrange the one bone, two bones, lots of blobs, digits is going to vary between all these different organisms, but we end up with that same pattern. Okay. Another pattern of evolution we see that really trips up my students in my plant ID class is convergent evolution, where we're going to have two different groups of organisms that are not closely related that live in similar habitats. And so therefore, the evolutionary pressures are going to mean that they're going to have similar looking traits. So if we take our same scrub oak, our Quercus turbinella, and we compare it to Berberis vermontii or Fremont's barberry, we can see that they have very similar looking leaves, even more similar than the scrub oaks and the Gamble's oak. Okay, they're both small, they're both hard, they're both stabby. Uh, they both have about the same size. So they're, but they do not share a common ancestor. These traits that they have in common are because they live in hot places that are dry. And these defense mechanisms of having hard leaves that are stabby are good at protecting your water sources from other things that might want to take that from you. So, um, in this case, of these small stabby leaves that we see on these two not closely related species, we would call these analogous traits. Okay, so these are shared similarities, and they have those similar traits because of their common environment. They're facing the same issue, and they come up with a similar solution. So let's look at this example where we have sharks and penguins and mammals. These come from different lineages, fish and birds and mammals. But if we look at their flippers, they're all similar size, shape, and that's because they do the same job. Form follows function. So if you need to propel your body through the water, this is the most effective shape to do it. Okay. And we can look at that internal anatomy and compare those, and we can see that, especially with the shark, that is very different than what we see going on with the birds and the dolphins.